Before we dive into this powerful story about standards, pride, and life-changing regrets, make sure you smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications because this tale has a lesson that could change your entire perspective on relationships. Drop a comment right now. Do you think having high standards is a good thing or a bad thing? Let's get into this story. In the upscale neighborhood of Victoria Island in Lagos, there lived a woman named Gabriella Okonkwo. At 38 years old, Gabriella was the definition of what society called a successful woman. She was a senior partner at one of Nigeria's most prestigious law firms, earning more money in a month than most people made in a year. She owned a stunning penthouse apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, drove a white Mercedes-Benz, and her designer wardrobe could rival any celebrity's closet. She was beautiful, educated, accomplished, and admired by everyone who knew her professionally. But Gabriella had one massive problem that consumed her family with worry and frustration. Despite being intelligent, beautiful, and successful, she was still single. Not because men weren't interested, they were very interested. Gabriella received proposals, date requests, and expressions of interest constantly. Wealthy businessmen, successful professionals, charming entrepreneurs, even politicians and celebrities had tried to court her over the years. But Gabriella rejected them all. Every single one. Because in her eyes, no man was ever good enough. Her standards weren't just high, they were impossibly astronomical. A man had to be more successful than her, but not so successful that he'd be too busy for her. He had to be tall, but not too tall. Handsome, but not so handsome that other women would chase him. He needed to be educated with multiple degrees, but also street smart. He had to be ambitious and driven, but also relaxed and easygoing. He needed to be a leader, but also sensitive and emotional. He had to come from a good family, have no baggage from past relationships, be a practicing Christian who attended church regularly, and somehow be perfect in ways that no human being could ever achieve. Gabriella's friends had watched this pattern for nearly 2 decades. During their university days, she had rejected a fellow law student named Chidi because he was too focused on his studies and boring. Chidi went on to become one of Nigeria's youngest Supreme Court justices. In her late 20s, she rejected a businessman named Tund because his family wasn't wealthy enough and he lacked sophistication. Tund built a tech company that was now worth hundreds of millions. At 32, she rejected a kind doctor named Femi because he was too nice and wouldn't challenge her intellectually. Femi became a renowned surgeon and married a lovely woman who appreciated his gentle nature. The list went on and on. Every man had some fatal flaw that disqualified him in Gabriella's eyes. Too short, too dark, too light-skinned, not ambitious enough, too ambitious, not romantic enough, too romantic and therefore probably a player, laughed too loud, spoke too softly, came from the wrong region, had an ex-girlfriend she didn't approve of, wore shoes she didn't like. The excuses became increasingly ridiculous, but Gabriella never wavered in her conviction that she deserved absolute perfection. Her mother, Mama Adana, had spent years begging Gabriella to be more realistic. "My daughter, there is no perfect man. Every person has flaws. You need to focus on finding a good man with a good heart, not a perfect man who doesn't exist." But Gabriella would respond with irritation. "Mama, I didn't work this hard to build my career and my life just to settle for someone mediocre. I deserve the best, and I won't compromise my standards for anyone." Her younger sister Chioma had married at 26 to a humble accountant. They lived a simple but happy life with 3 children. Gabriella often made subtle condescending comments about how Chioma had settled and could have done better. This hurt Chioma deeply, but she learned to ignore her sister's judgmental attitude. Gabriella's close friends tried multiple interventions over the years. Her best friend Ngozi sat her down one day and said bluntly, "Ella, you're chasing a fantasy. You want a man who's successful but not busy, confident but not arrogant, strong but vulnerable, independent but always available. These are contradictions. You're looking for characteristics that can't coexist in one person. You need to decide what truly matters and let go of this checklist mentality." Gabriella had responded coldly. "Just because you settled doesn't mean I have to. I'd rather be alone than be with someone who isn't my equal." As Gabriella approached her late 30s, the proposals and interest began to slow down. Men who might have pursued her years ago were now married with families. The dating pool for successful, never married men in her age range was shrinking rapidly. But Gabriella remained confident. She convinced herself that the right man would eventually appear, someone who checked every single box on her impossibly long list. Then, one evening at a charity gala, Gabriella met him. His name was Alexander Okafor. and he seemed to step directly out of Gabriella's wildest dreams. He was 42 years old, tall and handsome, with distinguished gray hair at his temples. He was the CEO of an international investment firm with offices across 3 continents. He held an MBA from Harvard and spoke 5 languages fluently. He came from a prominent Nigerian family with impeccable reputation. He was sophisticated, well-traveled, cultured, and carried himself with quiet confidence. He was a practicing Christian who led Bible study at his church. He had never been married and had no children. When Alexander approached Gabriella at the gala and introduced himself, she felt her heart race in a way it hadn't in years. They talked for hours about international law, economic policy, African politics, and philosophy. He was intelligent, articulate, and genuinely interested in her opinions. He treated her as an equal, respected her accomplishments, and seemed genuinely impressed by her career. For the first time in her life, Gabriella felt like she had met someone who might actually meet her standards. Alexander courted Gabriella properly over the following months. He took her to the finest restaurants, sent thoughtful gifts, called when he said he would, and treated her with respect and admiration. He introduced her to his family, who were warm and welcoming. He met her family, and even Gabriella's critical mother approved of him wholeheartedly. Her friends were shocked and delighted that Gabriella had finally found someone she deemed worthy. Everyone assumed an engagement was imminent. But then Gabriella started noticing things. Small things that other women might overlook, but that bothered her deeply. Alexander traveled frequently for business, sometimes for 2 weeks at a time. Gabriella didn't like being alone that much. He was very close to his mother and called her every single day. Gabriella found this slightly annoying and wondered if he was a mama's boy. He had a scar on his left shoulder from a childhood accident. Gabriella found herself fixating on it, thinking it marred his otherwise perfect appearance. He laughed very loudly at restaurants, which Gabriella found embarrassing. He enjoyed classical music, which Gabriella found pretentious and boring. The criticisms began to pile up in Gabriella's mind. He was too perfect, which made her suspicious. What was he hiding? He was too successful, which meant he'd always prioritize work over her. He was too close to his family, which meant she'd never be his first priority. His scar bothered her because what if their children inherited a tendency toward scarring? His laugh was too loud. His taste in music was wrong. He wore cologne that was too strong. He drove too fast. He was too generous with money, which suggested he might be financially reckless. After 8 months of dating, Alexander did what everyone expected. He proposed. It was perfect. A private beach at sunset, a stunning 5-carat diamond ring, words of love and commitment that made Gabriella's friends weep with joy when they heard about it later. But Gabriella hesitated. She asked for time to think about it. Alexander, patient and understanding, gave her space. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into a month. Alexander waited, confused by her hesitation but respecting her need for time. Finally, Gabriella called Alexander and gave him her answer. No, she couldn't marry him. When Alexander asked why, heartbroken and bewildered, Gabriella listed her concerns. The travel, the close relationship with his mother, the scar, the loud laugh, all of it. Alexander listened in stunned silence. Gabriella, he said quietly, you're rejecting me because I laugh too loud and have a scar from when I was 7 years old. His voice carried disbelief and pain. These aren't real reasons. What's the real issue? But Gabriella had convinced herself these were valid concerns. I just don't think we're compatible, she said. You're not quite what I'm looking for. Alexander left that conversation devastated but dignified. Within 6 months, he met someone else, a kind, down-to-earth doctor named Amara who appreciated him for who he was, scar and loud laugh included. They were married within a year and soon announced they were expecting their first child. When Gabriella heard the news through mutual friends, she felt a pang of something she couldn't quite identify. Regret? Jealousy? Loss? She pushed the feelings down and convinced herself she'd made the right choice. This is getting real. If you're seeing the lesson here, hit that like button and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below, is Gabriella being wise or foolish? Let's continue. But life had a harsh lesson waiting for Gabriella. The years continued to pass. 40 came and went. Then 42. Then 45. The proposals stopped coming entirely. The men who had once pursued her were now happily married or had moved on to younger women. Gabriella's friends, even the ones who had married later in life, now had families, children, grandchildren even. Family gatherings became painful as Gabriella watched everyone else's lives progress, while hers remained frozen in successful but lonely isolation. Her younger sister Chioma's children were now teenagers. At family gatherings, they would ask innocently, "Auntie Ella, why didn't you ever get married?" Gabriella would force a smile and say she was too focused on her career, but the question stung more each time. Her mother, now elderly and frail, had stopped asking about marriage. The disappointment in Mama Adana's eyes was worse than her previous nagging had ever been. Gabriella's career continued to flourish, but success felt hollow when she returned every night to an empty penthouse. She would stand at her floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the ocean, expensive wine in hand, designer clothes hanging in her closet, and feel profound emptiness. All the material success in the world couldn't fill the void of genuine human connection and companionship. One evening, Gabriella attended her goddaughter's wedding. Watching the young couple exchange vows, seeing their imperfect but genuine love, Gabriella felt something break inside her. After the ceremony, she sat with her childhood friend Ngozi, both of them now in their late 40s. "Ngozi," Gabriella said quietly, "I think I made a terrible mistake. All these years, I was waiting for perfect, and I rejected good. I rejected great, even. Alexander was wonderful, and I let him go because of a scar and a laugh. What's wrong with me?" Ngozi took her hand gently. "Ella, you've been chasing perfection your entire life. In your career, it served you well. But in relationships, perfection doesn't exist. Love isn't about finding someone without flaws. It's about finding someone whose flaws you can accept and who accepts yours in return. You never learned that lesson." Gabriella felt tears streaming down her face. "Is it too late for me? Am I going to die alone because I was too proud and too foolish to see what was right in front of me?" Ngozi sighed. "I don't know, Ella. Maybe it's not too late. But you'd have to fundamentally change how you view relationships and people. You'd have to let go of that checklist and open your heart to real, imperfect human connection. Can you do that?" Gabriella wanted to say yes, but years of habits and mindsets aren't easy to change. She went home that night and looked at herself honestly for the first time in decades. She realized that her impossibly high standards had never really been about finding the right partner. They had been about protecting herself from vulnerability, from the messiness of real relationships, from the risk of being hurt or disappointed. By demanding perfection, she had created an impossible barrier that no man could cross, which meant she never had to face the fears and insecurities that came with genuine intimacy. It was safer to be alone and proud than to be partnered and vulnerable. But that safety had cost her everything that truly mattered: love, family, companionship, children, a shared life with someone. She had won the battle for pride and lost the war for happiness. Gabriella made some changes after that revelation. She started therapy to address her perfectionism and fear of vulnerability. She became more involved with her sister's family, building genuine relationships with her nieces and nephews. She volunteered with organizations that helped young women, trying to teach them lessons she'd learned too late. She even went on a few dates with men who didn't check every box, trying to see people for who they were rather than who she wanted them to be. But the years of rejection had consequences that couldn't be easily undone. The good men who might have been interested were long gone, married to women who had appreciated them when it mattered. Gabriella was now in her 50s, and while she was still beautiful and successful, the reality was harsh. Her choices had led her to a life she never intended, a life of loneliness despite all her accomplishments. She would sometimes see Alexander's family photos on social media, him with his wife Amara and their 3 beautiful children, looking genuinely happy in their imperfect, messy, real life together. The scar was still there on his shoulder. He still laughed too loudly, but he was loved, cherished, and appreciated for exactly who he was. And Gabriella had to live with the knowledge that she had rejected that possibility because of her pride. The moral of Gabriella's story is profound and painful. Perfection is the enemy of good. When you demand that everyone and everything meet impossible standards, you end up with nothing at all. Having standards is important, but having unrealistic standards based on superficial criteria means you'll reject genuine goodness when it appears. Pride can cost you everything that matters while leaving you with everything that doesn't. Success and material wealth mean nothing without people to share them with. And sometimes, by the time you realize what you've lost, it's too late to get it back. Gabriella learned these lessons, but the tuition was her entire life's happiness. What did you learn from Gabriella's story? Do you know someone with impossibly high standards? Are you that person? Drop your honest thoughts in the comments. If this story made you reflect on your own life and choices, smash that like button and share this with someone who needs this reality check. Subscribe and turn on notifications for more powerful African folktales that teach real-world wisdom. Check our playlist for more life-changing stories. Remember, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Real love is messy, imperfect, and beautifully human. Choose wisely before time makes the choice for you. I'll see you in the next story.